What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and with Thor 4 coming out and us basically getting Russell Crowe's Zeus, the number one question people are going to be asking is who is more powerful, Odin or Zeus? So all we really have to draw on here is really Marvel Comics. Honestly, this is the first time we're seeing Russell Crowe's Zeus. We have no idea what he's capable of, and I would really agree with most opinions out there in saying that the reason we're even getting Zeus in this movie is to illustrate how powerful Gore is. That Gore is powerful enough to kill beings like Zeus, that we and the average person would look at as seeing somebody comparable to Odin and saying, damn, he's that powerful, right? He basically, by killing Zeus, he could have, in effect, killed Odin. Most likely, possibly. We won't really know because Odin's been dead since Thor Ragnarok. So one of the cool things here, and really what we have to draw on again, is looking at comics. Now, the number one place that most people look at is like a Marvel cosmic hierarchy. The biggest issue that you have when it comes to cosmic hierarchies, though, is that more often than not, they focus largely on cosmic beings, right? Abstract. So like the cosmic entities, Master Order, Lord Chaos, Eternity, Infinity, Living Tribunal, all that kind of stuff. And by and large, that hierarchy is pretty straightforward. That you've usually got the Living Tribunal at the top, you've got Eternity and Infinity under him, you have like caveat characters, so like the Beyonder, the Molecule Man, the Phoenix Force sometimes when it's like Jean Grey with the White Phoenix of the Crown, Protege, Marquis of Death, right, different things like that, but sticking largely with like the continuous beings that are always there and are always powerful. Under Eternity and Infinity, you usually got like Master Order, Lord Chaos, Sire Hate, Mistress Love, different things like that. And then depending on the circumstances, like the Stranger maybe, or the Celestials, Galactus, whatever. But in the Thanos wins story arc, you actually end up getting like Odin and Zeus who are thrown in there. Now, one of the big things that are up for debate about this is that in this particular cosmic hierarchy depiction, we are given the Living Tribunal at the top, we're given Eternity and Infinity, none of the caveat characters are given to us here. Under Eternity and Infinity, you're given Master Order, Lord Chaos, Mistress Love, and Sire Hate. And then on the fourth level, which people kind of debate this, you're given Galactus, the Celestials, it looks like Kronos, although it might be the in-betweener, and then you're given Odin, Zeus, and the Stranger. Now, conventional wisdom, based on just general knowledge of Marvel Comics, if you've read long enough, is that Galactus and the Celestials are above Odin and Zeus. And a lot of that really goes back to like the arrival of the third host, the idea that like the Skyfathers, so Odin, Zeus, and the various other, earthly pantheon of gods band together, they try to fight off the Celestials, they use the Destroyer armor, and then the Celestials annihilate the Destroyer armor, and they're just like, if you keep this up, we will kill all of you. And ultimately, the Skyfathers basically back off, things like that. You can kind of use the transitive property to a degree and say, well, Galactus is comparable to the Celestials, so obviously Galactus is more powerful than Odin or Zeus. There is, however, a story in, I think it's Rick Remender's run on Thor. I'm not going to swear to that. I'm not going to swear that it's Rick Remender's run. But there is a point where Odin fights Galactus and just headbutts the hell out of him. And like that one attack is enough to put Odin into the Odin sleep, and it just kind of leaves Galactus a little dizzied, right? So little things like that where maybe they're comparable. But in this particular instance, you basically get Odin and Zeus who are put on an even keel. And it's just like, these two guys are even in terms of their power. And there have been things like that. Like I'm pretty sure during Greg Pak's Incredible Hulk's run, you did get a fight between Odin and Zeus, and they were argued to be equal. But the bigger problem with this, though, is that once you wind the clock back and you go further back in Marvel Comics, what you end up running into is a situation where you actually find that Marvel's kind of established in different ways over the years that Odin is more powerful than Zeus. A really good example of this, and one that a lot of people point to, is a combination of things, right? So like Thor Annual number 5 from 1966. If you look at Thor 618 from 2007, it's one of these things where you're basically given an indication of how old Odin is, and that Odin is billions of years old, right? That he existed before time itself. How exactly that happens, I don't entirely know, because given the events of Thor Ragnarok or Thor Disassembled, that Odin had essentially come into existence with the rest of the universe. He'd been reborn, which was basically the cycle of Ragnarok ending with the death of the universe, or the multiverse, or what have you, right? Whatever era you want to follow. But the thing about that is that Odin is incredibly old. A lot of people use that as a way to argue that just based on longevity, right? His experience in like fighting battles and things like that he is more experienced than Zeus is. However, a lot of people look to Zeus in terms of just being stronger and more capable than Odin. However, Odin is wiser than Zeus. And so while Zeus is the better fighter, Odin knows when to avoid a fight and when to engage in a fight. But having said all of that, most fans consider Odin to just be stronger than Zeus, and for one particular caveat. That reason basically being Odin being in possession of the Odin Force. That's the one thing that gives him a kind of trump card. That without the Odin Force, without the life force of basically his brothers Vili and V, that Odin would just be comparable, if not just flat out equal to Zeus in terms of power. But the Odin Force is what just generally gives him the extra edge between the two. Having said that, in terms of how they compare in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's hard to tell, right? I mean, it's going to be a difficult thing to tell, and it's really for a variety of reasons. The first is because we're just now being introduced to Zeus, and we don't know how much of his character we're going to get in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It could be one of those things where, like, when we're introduced to Zeus by way of Valkyrie, or maybe even like Hercules himself, or like Jane Foster, whatever the case is, or perhaps Zeus just runs over his own history in there, we end up getting these little things where they talk about the various battles that like Zeus and Odin had fought, and how Odin had always lost to Zeus, or something along those lines. Now, if we get that, you'll probably end up seeing people who just want to continue believing that Odin is stronger than Zeus, kind of coming up with things like, well, Zeus was just saying that to make himself look more impressive than he was, whatever the case is. I don't know, right? Like, when it comes to comic books, people believe what they want to believe, right? So the thing about this is that we won't really know for sure. The other big reason why it's going to be difficult to tell between the two is because, by and large, we've never actually seen Odin fight. Not in a real, true knockdown drag out fight. We never really saw that. By the time Odin came onto the scene, he was basically retired, right? He's like, I mean, anything that really requires my attention in terms of a conflict is basically done, so I just chill, right? You know, he just hangs out in Asgard, never really does anything, and just chastises Thor from time to time. And like, that's basically it. We did see a couple of instances, like, I think it was Bor in Thor 2, in Thor the Dark World, who was fighting off against like Malekith and those guys, right? Using a bit of a transitive property there, you could say like, if he was that capable of a fighter, he would have taught his son very much the same way. So Odin was at least as powerful as Bor, if not more powerful. There's different ways to interpret that, but in terms of just a straight up knockdown, drag out fight, we never really got to see that. So we don't really know exactly what it is that Odin is capable of. We just know he's really powerful. If I was a betting man, to be honest with you guys, if I were a straight betting man and I had to offer an opinion that people are anxiously waiting for, if for no other reason than to just disagree with it, I would say that it's most likely Odin is more powerful than Zeus. That you know, Anthony Hopkins' Odin could overpower Russell Crowe's Zeus. The funny thing about this, though, and this is one of the things to keep in mind when you're talking about guys like that, there does come a point when it comes to the Skyfathers that they don't really fight per se, that they meet and occasionally they do stuff, but in terms of like sheer just knockdown, drag out fights, unless you're talking about something like the Chaos King or somebody who's like intentionally invading like Olympus or Asgard or something like that, you're not really going to see a lot of instances where they engage in combat. Those days are for the most part long since gone for them. There was an amazing moment when Zeus took the Incredible Hulk to the woodshed. That was amazing. He beat the hell out of him. Just to watch Zeus beat the crap out of the Hulk was just absolutely amazing. Now, had that fight gone on long enough, the Hulk would have just easily overpowered Zeus, right? Worldbreaker Hulk would probably be able to crush Zeus, maybe. I don't know. I'm just ballparking there, right? Heart of the Monster Hulk absolutely would be able to. Titan Hulk would do it without breaking a sweat. But in terms of just the Incredible Hulk, yeah, he got smacked around more than a few times by Zeus. It was pretty cool to see. But outside of that, again, you know, I would say that the winner of this bout most likely goes to Odin, right? Goes to Anthony Hopkins' Odin. But again, I'm interested to see what they do, because I feel like this is a question the MCU knows exists out there. There's a question people are going to want an answer to when they get into the movie. I don't think people are going to want to see a fight. I mean, it'd be cool to see, but I don't think like the main focus of anybody going into Thor 4 is like, man, I really hope we get a scene where like Zeus fights Odin, even if it's just a flashback. I think most people are focused on like watching Gore just kill all the gods across these different parts of the universe, and most likely kill Zeus. But I think that it'd be a cool reference, and it's something that people would, I don't know, maybe kind of expect to see or talked about in some form or fashion, some establishment as to who's more powerful, Zeus or Odin. I imagine if the MCU does handle that, they'll probably play both sides of the fence, right? And it'll probably be one of those things where like somebody asks the question, right? You know, where like Star-Lord or someone's like, so who's more powerful, like you or Odin? And Thor's like, well, of course it's my father. And Zeus just kind of looks at him funny for a second and is like, you know, that we won't worry about that, right? It just kind of sweeps it under the rug, right? And just never really gives an answer. I could see that being the case. And honestly, I think it'd be funny, more of like a comedic element to that. People who are like diehard and want a definitive answer will probably get mad about it, but they'll be okay. But having said that, you know, again, just kind of my take on this, I would give it to Odin. I would say Odin's probably more powerful than Zeus if we're talking about both guys in their prime fighting against each other. But Marvel Comics gives us different depictions. Sometimes Odin's more powerful than Zeus, sometimes they're equal. I don't really think there's been an instance in Marvel Comics when they've established that Zeus is actually more powerful than Odin. So I guess you can just kind of go with that. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.